Boeing had one answer every time someone asked about the 737 MAX. Safe, certified, ready to fly, hundreds of flights a day, millions of passengers trusting that answer. Then one morning over the Java Sea, a Lion Air jet dropped out of the sky 13 minutes after takeoff. 5 months later, an Ethiopian Airlines flight hit a field outside Addis Ababa. 346 people dead. Same plane, same failure. And buried deep inside Boeing's own engineering files was proof they saw it coming. What they chose to do with that proof is the part of this story Boeing is still hoping you never find out. Let's get started. For decades, Boeing had been synonymous with aviation excellence. The company that built the bombers that helped win World War II, the aircraft that launched the jet age, and the planes that connected the world through commercial flight. But somewhere along the way, the company that championed engineering perfection began chasing something else entirely. And that shift in corporate culture would eventually fall from the sky in Indonesia and Ethiopia, taking hundreds of innocent lives with it. The transformation of Boeing began in 1997, when the company merged with McDonnell Douglas in a roughly $14 billion deal. On paper, Boeing was acquiring its competitor, but McDonnell Douglas executives, led by CEO Harry Stonecipher, quickly took control of Boeing's corporate culture. The engineering-first mindset that had defined Boeing for decades was replaced by a Wall Street-focused approach that prioritized quarterly earnings and stock prices over safety margins and engineering excellence. The new Boeing moved its headquarters from Seattle, where engineers had walked the factory floors for generations, to Chicago, separating corporate leadership from the people actually building the planes. The company that once spent years perfecting new designs began operating under intense pressure to compete with Airbus and deliver planes faster and cheaper than ever before. This pressure reached a breaking point when Airbus launched the A320neo in 2010. The fuel-efficient aircraft was an immediate hit with airlines, threatening Boeing's dominance in the narrow-body market. Boeing faced a choice. They could spend 10 to 15 years and $20 billion developing an entirely new aircraft to compete, or they could modify their existing 737 design to match the A320neo's fuel efficiency. Boeing chose the modification route, but there was a problem. The new, larger engines required for improved fuel efficiency didn't fit properly on the 737's low-to-the-ground design. Boeing's solution was to mount the engines higher and further forward on the wing. But this created an aerodynamic issue that could cause the nose to pitch up during certain flight conditions. Instead of redesigning the aircraft or requiring extensive pilot training, Boeing developed a software system called the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. This system was designed to automatically push the nose down when it detected the aircraft was at risk of stalling. But here's where Boeing's priorities became crystal clear. The company deliberately limited information about MCAS to keep the 737 MAX classified as the same aircraft type as previous 737 models. This classification was crucial for Boeing's business model. Airlines could fly the 737 MAX with existing 737 pilots, requiring only a brief computer training module instead of expensive simulator training. Boeing even offered financial penalties to airlines if the MAX required more training than promised. The pressure to keep training requirements minimal meant pilots flying the 737 MAX often had no idea the MCAS system even existed. The MCAS system relied on data from angle of attack sensors that measured whether the aircraft's nose was pointed too high. But Boeing designed the system to use input from only one sensor, not two. If that single sensor failed or provided incorrect data, MCAS would repeatedly force the aircraft into a dive, fighting against pilots who had no idea why their aircraft was behaving erratically. On October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Jakarta's airport with a faulty angle of attack sensor. The MCAS system immediately began forcing the nose down, and the pilots found themselves in a desperate struggle against their own aircraft. For 11 minutes, they fought the system, pulling up on their controls, while MCAS drove the nose toward the earth. The Boeing 737 MAX dove into the Java Sea at over 400 miles per hour. The crash sent shockwaves through the aviation industry, but Boeing and the Federal Aviation Administration initially downplayed the role of the MCAS system. Airlines continued flying 737 MAX aircraft around the world, with many pilots still unaware of the system's existence. Boeing issued a bulletin about MCAS after the Lion Air crash, but the information was buried in technical documentation that many pilots never saw. 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 departed Addis Ababa Airport on a clear morning. Captain Yared Getachew, an experienced pilot with over 8,000 flight hours, was at the controls. Just minutes after takeoff, the same deadly scenario began to unfold. The MCAS system, responding to faulty sensor data, began repeatedly pitching the aircraft downward, while the pilots fought to maintain control. Unlike the Lion Air crew, the Ethiopian pilots had been briefed on MCAS following the earlier crash. They followed Boeing's emergency procedures as written, shutting off the system's electrical power and attempting to control the aircraft manually. But Boeing's procedures were fatally flawed. Because the engines remained at full takeoff thrust, the aircraft was flying far beyond its maximum operating speed. The aerodynamic forces on the tail were so immense that the manual trim wheels physically locked up, requiring more strength than any pilot could provide. In a desperate attempt to regain control, they briefly reactivated the electrical system, allowing MCAS to strike one final, fatal time. The aircraft plunged into a field near the village of Bishoftu, killing all 157 people on board. The Ethiopian Airlines crash finally forced authorities to ground the 737 MAX worldwide. Investigations revealed the devastating truth about Boeing's design philosophy and the compromises that had led to both crashes. CEO Dennis Muilenburg initially blamed pilot error and foreign training standards for both accidents. This response ignored the fundamental design flaws that had made both crashes inevitable and showed a stunning lack of accountability from Boeing's leadership. The grounding of the 737 MAX cost Boeing over $20 billion in direct costs, including production delays and legal settlements. The company paid a $2.5 billion settlement with the Department of Justice, which included a criminal fine and over $500 million specifically for the families of the crash victims. The 737 MAX eventually returned to service in November 2020 after extensive modifications and enhanced pilot training requirements. But the damage to Boeing's reputation and the industry's self-regulation model was irreversible. The Boeing 737 MAX crashes serve as a stark reminder that in aviation, there are no acceptable shortcuts when it comes to safety. When corporate profits become more important than engineering excellence, when regulatory oversight becomes a formality rather than a safeguard, and when pilot training becomes in cost to minimize rather than a critical safety investment, tragedy becomes inevitable. The 346 people who died in those crashes paid the ultimate price for Boeing's design flaws and the industry's failure to prioritize their safety above all else.